Great, that's it. Yeah, we've just changed the internet provider as well, so I've moved to Vodafone, so I'm hoping it'll be fine. Okay, so because we're a bit out in the sticks, the connection sometimes can be tricky, but Vodafone should be fine. So we're going to begin. We're going to begin lying down. What I'd like us to do is we're going to work. It's a bit of a funny class, I have to say. It's a bit of everything, but we're going to work. It is going to dominate a little bit around the pelvis, I would say. So we're going to start off on our backs, and I'd like us to lift up the feet quite a bit. So I've got these bricks, but you could use a bolster and some more material, with the idea to lift the feet. So we're going to come into Supta Baddha Konasana as a beginner's pose. Depending on your flexibility in the groins, you want to have the feet higher or lower. So if you want to feel a bit more intensity in the groins, then lift the feet quite high. Okay. And then the arms, you could, so I'm just lying on the back. I'm not on a bolster here. I'm just lying straight onto the floor. The arms can be above the head. Checking that you're more or less in a straight line. So the feet, pelvis, spinal column, releasing the arms. Just close the eyes. So we're going to have a few moments to build up our mindfulness practice. So it's worth pointing out, we don't need to practice yoga to practice mindfulness. You can always practice mindfulness, any activity. This is one of the great, you could say, great aspects or great gifts of mindfulness. It's always useful. It's not always comfortable developing mindfulness, certainly in situations which are more challenging or boring or something like that, but we can always develop mindfulness. And we're going to be bringing mindfulness into our yoga practice. So I'd like to, first of all, get a sense of the whole body. Coming into Supta Baddha Konasana. You can allow the back of the pelvis to sink towards the floor, the back of the upper body to make full contact with the floor, back of the head, backs of the arms. So the yin style practice, so I've been doing this practice for years really. I'm really grateful to Padma Darshini, who introduced me to it, because it's been such a great source, you know, like a kind of spring well of a kind of satisfying yoga practice. So it's emphasizing moving more slowly, staying in the poses, and allowing the poses to really penetrate down. So it's a mixture of working the body. So we're aiming more towards what's called the connective tissue, but it's also, there's an element of resting. So sometimes called like a passive yoga, because you're using gravity basically to get the effect, to get the work. So with some poses, you might notice straight away the effect. So I'm beginning to feel now the groins. So let's become a little bit more specific with our attention. So we're aware of the whole body, its position in space, the space around us, but now starting to become aware of specific areas. This pose should be inviting some work into the groins. This is an area that we looked at the last time I taught 2 weeks ago. Also noticing any areas that feel tight or blocked. Any areas that don't feel particularly conscious. That's always very interesting. Obviously, if we're not that conscious, it's more difficult to notice. You might notice some areas are kind of duller than others. And then tuning in with a sense of your mood, your mind state, what we call chitta, the heart mind. So that could just be a simple question. So we're noticing how your mood is. It's going to be affected by as much by inner dynamics as what's been going on in your life today, or the last few days, the last month, or the last months. And then tuning in with this quality of anitya. This is the process of change, or that everything is changing, ourselves included, nothing fixed. So if we could just begin to introduce an element of awareness of that quality, to aware that our process is dynamic, or that we are a dynamic process. Of becoming interested in that quality. And then finally, I'd like you to tune in with the breath. So you could work with drawing the breath more towards the belly area. I'm going to let you decide. I know Sadhguru was teaching last week quite clearly the diaphragmatic breath. So do feel free to work with that in the sessions, all of the sessions, unless we're saying otherwise. Okay, then from here, start to move the arms around. I want you to gather up your legs towards you for a moment. Well, move the bricks away. Okay. Gather up the legs towards you, bringing one hand onto each knee. So very gently to start with the inhale, we're moving the knees away from us. And with the exhale, bringing the knees towards us. We're doing a panasana, exhaling, gently floating the knees towards you, inhaling away. We'll do this 8 or 10 times. So we're going to be doing quite a slow session today, I have to say. Taking advantage of this time to really tune in with your own body, with your own heart mind, listening to what's going on. Exhale, the knees float towards us, inhale away. Okay, and then letting both feet drop to the floor. I want you to bring your right ankle just above the left knee, and then thread your right arm through the legs. And see if you can reach to beyond the shin or behind the thigh, coming into this hip stretch. So again, we allow the pelvis to drop towards the floor. See if you can relax the arms, even though the fingers are interlaced, relaxing the arms. Feeling your way into the right hip. So this is a hip stretch. Works around the hip rotators. the groin area. Relaxing the head on the floor, releasing the head, releasing the neck, releasing around the shoulders and the arms, upper arms, and coming back to your breath. If you want to work more consciously with diaphragmatic breath, go for that. And releasing the feet down. I'm going to switch side. So the left ankle comes up above, just on the left thigh, right thigh above the knee. Threading the left arm through the legs, interlacing the fingers, observing any difference between the two sides of the body. Allowing the back of the body to make contact with the floor, as it were, melt, surrender to the floor. So the emphasis with yin style poses is surrendering, letting go. Just this phrase of using the minimal muscular effort to do the pose, emphasizing more sense of flexibility, continuity of, as it were, pressure or stretch within the pose over even a few minutes. Can be a few minutes. So the overall effect of this yin practice, it leaves the body softer. So it's not going to be toning and strengthening. So that's where it is really important to attend to that aspect of your practice, toning and strengthening. But this is also useful for softening, opening, working more quietly, more passively. Tuning in with the sensations. It's not really, I was just saying to a biomantra, it's not really a beginner's practice because it requires quite a bit of sensitivity to your experience. Otherwise, it's like you need to be able to tune in with the subtlety and as much detail as possible. So really tuning in with what's happening in the left hip, the left groin. I think with beginners, that's just harder. It's like the whole body can just feel like one big block. I mean, it's difficult to imagine that, but it probably can. Probably your body is like that sometimes, and it's certainly was when you first started practicing yoga. It's like there just wasn't subtlety of awareness of what's going on. So we develop that with time. Okay, from there, releasing. I like to bring both soles of feet onto the floor, interlace the fingers around the back of the head and support the back of the head and open the elbows towards the floor. We're going to do a little bit of toning now. So as we exhale, I want you to bring the right thigh towards you. As you inhale, extend up towards the vertical. Exhale, bring the leg back towards you. And inhale, parallel to the floor. So your left foot stays grounded. Exhale, draw the leg in towards you. Inhale towards the vertical. Exhale, fold towards you. Inhale to the horizontal. So we're just working the right side. Exhale, drawing in. This is like a toning, strengthening of the hip flexor. Exhale, folding in. Inhale, extending out, parallel to the floor. Keeping a sense of your left foot grounded so the pelvis stays, a sense of the pelvis staying stable and level. Releasing around the neck, releasing around the shoulders. So if that's fairly straightforward, I'd like you to keep the legs straight for a moment. Exhale, 2 parallel to the floor, inhale to the vertical. It's almost like a leg swing. Exhale down, but we're keeping the leg engaged. Inhale to the vertical, exhale down. Inhale to the vertical, exhale down. Remembering your left leg, the left foot could stay slightly active to keep the pelvis, a sense of stability and groundedness in the pelvis. Okay, and then releasing, both feet grounded in semi-supine, bringing the left thigh towards you. Inhale to the vertical, exhale, left thigh towards you. Inhale to the horizontal. So we're alternating between horizontal and the vertical. With the in-breath, the out-breath, bring the thigh in towards you. So now the right foot is doing the grounding. Sense of releasing around the neck, the head is resting back to the hands resting back to the floor, elbows resting back to the floor. Exhale, folding the leg in, inhale, extending. So if that's okay, taking the leg towards the vertical, keeping the leg straight now, and to the parallel on the exhale. Inhale to the vertical, exhale to the parallel, keeping the leg as straight as is possible. Okay, extending now. Down to the floor, the left leg. Bringing your right leg towards you. I'd like you to take the hands around the back of the right thigh or right knee. Okay, so we're going to extend the leg towards the vertical now. So it may or may not straighten. So it's okay if it doesn't straighten. So I'm going to slide the hands towards the calf. So it's going to be a more intense leg stretch. If you can, pick up the head, looking down towards the feet and extend both legs strongly. Just like you're hanging off your right leg, and then lift the left leg off the floor. So we're in a sort of, it almost feels like a balancing pose. So the lower section of the spine is grounded, the sacrum. I'm looking towards my left foot. I'm hanging off the right leg. Right leg is as straight as it's possible. Arms long, careful with the neck, breathing there. Extending there, then keeping the arms long, keeping the connection. So if you can draw back towards the floor, the head, bringing the head down, and moving more towards just a straight leg stretch. So the hands around the calf, or if that's too intense for you, bring the hands a little bit lower down. So we're not using a strap here. Extending through both legs. Now my left foot is grounded. I'm extending through the right leg towards the vertical. Shoulder blades dropping back to the floor. Head on the floor and release. Releasing the right leg to the floor, completely to the floor. Bend up your left leg and reach up towards the sort of mid-calf, well, wherever you can take hold of the calf. So your left leg may not be straight to begin with, but we're going to be moving towards a straight leg. So as to come into the first, as it were, the balance toning position. So extend the left leg towards the vertical, lift the head off the floor, looking down towards the right foot. The right leg is floating off the floor. Careful with the neck, breathing now. Extending both legs, so I can feel the sacrum, lumbar, spine on the floor, but then the rest of the spine is starting to pick up off the floor. Breathing there, keeping the legs engaged. This is definitely not a yin pose, this is more yang, more toning, strengthening, and release. But we're going to keep the arms, as it were, attached to the leg. And see if you can release the head down to the floor, moving into a more straightforward leg stretch. Straightening the left leg as much as is possible, keeping the right leg engaged, but it's now resting on the floor. Extending both legs. Is it possible to straighten the left leg? And like it's not today, that's fine. But moving in that direction. So you feel an intense leg stretch to the back of the leg. Okay, and then releasing down. Good. Okay. From there, we're going to roll around to one side, coming into a little hip sequence, which will be super familiar for a yin style yin sequence. I like to start in all fours. And from there, coming up into dog pose. Opening the backs of the legs. So we'll work just to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to just say which side to do, but if you want to do the other side, that's fine. Okay, so we'll start with the right leg. So I like to pick up the right leg and move the right leg towards what's sometimes called dragon tail. So you roll the pelvis to the right, bend the right leg, and we swing this leg forwards, the right leg, right shin. So it crosses your mat and you come down into swan, okay? You can come into a full passive swan. So that's where the head comes to the floor. You take your elbows wide and you release to the floor. If you want to keep a little bit of activity in the upper body, then I've been teaching it like this. So I'm on my forearms and I'm lifting my upper body away from the floor. It's really up to you how you want to do that. You can explore both. Okay. So it's again working into the hip rotators. It's a deepening of the lying on the back hip stretch, which we just did. So with beginners, you might do lying on the back hip stretch, but this is for more practiced students. Okay. So breathing here, reconnecting with the breath, possibly moving towards the breath in the belly, towards even diaphragmatic breath. Softening around the shoulders, around the neck, allowing the pose to penetrate down into the hip joint, a deep stretch into the buttock. So it helps to take the elbows wide, so there's a sense of broadening across the chest, at least the upper chest. Okay, and then from there, we're going to ground the palms either side of your body, as it were, chest height. Lift carefully the whole body off the floor, well, like the pelvis and the chest at the same time. Then we're going to drop onto our right buttock, swing the left leg forwards, and come into shoelace. So that transition we have done before. Those two work together well, but I'd like us to come into a lateral shoelace. So we're going to go take the left hand to the left. So I'm going to move towards the camera and take the right arm up. So I'm trying to keep my right sitting bone grounded. Right sitting bone grounded. And I'm opening the right side of the body. So there's an extension to the right side, but you will feel like compressive forces in the left side of the body. So you might feel, yeah, I mean, I can feel it. I can feel as it were, the ribs on the left side moving down towards the pelvis. Okay. Just we're aware of this. Yeah, in most poses, you've got like on one side you've got extension, or what you could call tension, tensile forces, and then on the other side of the body, you're usually going to get compressive. So here we're opening the right side. So there's a tensile forces stretching on the right, and on the left, compressive. If it's too intense for you, you can bring your right arm down and just rest it onto the right hip. So I'm basically leaning out, again, using gravity, following this principle of gravity does the work, to hang out in the pose. You could see like yin poses as a series of series of like hangouts in different poses. Yeah, slow rhythm, potentially conducive to meditation or to mindfulness, but there is a discipline of bringing that attention into your experience. So look for sensations, even if they're not particularly pleasant. So a sense of anchoring into your experience rather than thinking about something else. Okay, from there, we're going to come up to the vertical. So the left knee should be on top. And now you want to move the left leg forwards and the right leg forwards. So your left shin is most forwards and the right shin is behind the left shin. So we're in what's called square pose. So just linking three poses together here. Okay, swan, shoelace, and then square pose. We're taking both arms up, floating them up. We're now going to tip forwards into a forward flexion, allowing your body to release forwards as much as the body allows. No forcing. So it's important that we're working gently when we approach our yoga practice. Avoid doing any harm, unnecessary harm. Challenging the body is we're going to want to do that, but it's just getting the right amount of stressing. So it's this idea that stress has got a positive aspect to it. Yeah. So with stress, there's a sense of growing, as long as it's not too much stress, which just, as it were, overwhelms. So exploring your limits here in a forward fold, square pose. So this does work into the hip rotators again. I'm noticing it more on my left side. Okay, I've got my left shin forwards. My left hip area is feeling more like it's working more. Allowing your body to come forward as much or as little as is appropriate. Okay. Hanging out in the pose for a few minutes. Reconnecting with the breath. Okay, then from there, on an inhale, carefully restacking the spine. You can use the hands to support that. We're going to move around into all fours. We're going to move through those 3 poses on the opposite side, but first of all, coming into all fours, into dog pose, opening the backs of the legs, lengthening through both sides of the body. So the left leg now comes up into what's called dragon tail. So you open the left groin. You can bend the left leg, roll the pelvis to the left. So that is a poser. There is something to explore there. Relationship between the pelvis and the lower body, lower spine. Swinging this leg forwards, coming into sleeping swan. Okay, so either coming all the way to the floor so you can let the head rest. We can also use a bolster here underneath the chest area, or supporting yourself on your forearms, keeping the front of the body a bit longer. I'll let you decide what you're going to do there. Breathing, reconnecting with the breath, allowing the breath to move down towards the belly. Remembering to broaden across the elbows, like spacing the elbows out, broadening across the collarbones. And then tuning in with the specific sensations in these poses. So a lot of the yin poses are working a specific area, so there's plenty of sensations to tune in with. So it helps to anchor you into your experience. Checking that we're releasing around the neck, the face, the jaw. This is going to bring a sense of softness or liquidity into the pelvic area. These poses it's going to feel lighter, more fluid. Connecting with your breathing. And then from there, we're going to ground the palms. So just to avoid any excessive strain into the lower spine, I suggest you lift your pelvis and your chest more or less at the same rate. Just like you're lifting your upper body off the floor. And then dropping down onto the left buttock, we're going to swing the right leg forward. So I'm just going to swing around to look at the camera now. So I've got my right leg on top. And what that means, so we're going to go out to the right. So coming into a lateral shoelace. So I'm taking my right arm, right hand out to the right and the left arm up. So the gaze, you can play with the gaze. Can be more up towards the ceiling, can be more forwards, if it were a more neutral spine, or it could be looking down. If it's a bit intense on the upper arm and left side of the body, you could bring your left arm down. That feels a bit easier for me, I have to say, bring the left arm down, but both is good. Depends how much you want to work here. It's a little bit intense on the rib cage area for me, taking the left arm up right now. So I'm going to take the left arm down. Keeping the left sitting bone grounded. And again, working with gravity. So we're opening just a lateral flexion to the left, to the right. Maybe you're noticing some compression on the right side. And then this tensile stretching on the left side. Breathing there. So sometimes this is also done with a bolster where you bring or some bricks where you bring the forearm. If you're almost reaching the floor, but not quite. You could rest your right forearm in this case on the bolster. So I have to say, I do use a lot of props when I teach yin yoga, which might not be the way that the founders teach it. But personally, I find it really useful using props a lot. So the idea is not to be getting like always full intense experience in the poses, looking for a slightly more subtle, less demanding. That the idea being that if we're not under a lot of pressure, as it were, a strain, stress in the pose, it's more possible to soften and to relax, because there's a lot of very intense sensations. It's likely we're going to actually tense up a little bit to protect. Breathing now. And then from here, coming up on the inhale, carefully back up to the vertical. And then we're going to bring, so the right shin should be forwards now, the left shin behind the right shin. You will want to have some padding underneath the ankles, rather than being straight onto the floor there. And then we're going to reach up both arms. So I'm going to move forwards towards the camera here into a forward fold called square pose. So the legs forming a more or less square shape. Breathing now. Again, you could use, if you're coming almost to the floor but not quite, you want to rest onto the forearms, bring the floor up, use the props if you've got them at hand. And allowing the head to release down, so relaxing the neck. Breathing there, allowing the pose to penetrate down into the pelvic area. So I'm feeling this more strongly in the groins and on the right side of the body. So I've got my right shin forwards, but it's going to vary person to person where the sensations are most strong, where they manifest most strongly. From there on, inhale, we're going to come up. And I am going to recommend now that we've got something in front of us. A bolster is kind of ideal. I haven't done this pose for a while, so I'd like to extend your legs out for a moment. Just release the legs. I'm going to move you probably don't need to do this, but it's probably worth, you want to have your mat, as it were, you're coming into the long edge of your mat, okay? So I'm going to be like diving towards the camera. So come into all fours, and then we take the knees wide, okay? So this is called frog pose. So the idea is to bring weight into the inner groins, but as it were from face down, okay? So it's similar to Baddha Konasana, but it's not really very helpful, that camera view. Just going to change sideways. Okay, so another way in is to, I'll just go through that again, is to take the knees wide. So I'm sitting back on my feet. You definitely want padding under the knees, okay? I'm then coming forward into all fours and allowing the belly and pelvis to come down towards the floor. The feet may float up. Hopefully you can see that. And then you want to find a position for the head. Usually I find resting the chin forwards more helpful in this. Or I could rest it over the end of the bolster. But you want to have weight going into the groins, okay? Just playing with the angle the way that gravity is working through the body. So this is like a passive groin opener. It's like the reverse position in terms of gravity of Supta Baddha Konasana. So gravity is working from through the back of the body towards the front rather than the front towards the back. And then the overall effect of the pose can be quite different because of the fact that we've changed the alignment, the position. So the feet you can try to keep together or just let them drift apart. That's fine. So it's usually pretty intense, okay? Yeah, what to say? You can allow yourself to relax, at least for a few breaths in the pose, if it's possible, to be as quiet and as still as possible. It's sometimes called frog. Okay, from there, I'm sure some of you could stay longer, but that is really enough for me. So I'm going to come up, use the arms, bring the knees in. And I'm just going to stretch out through the back of each leg, okay? Good. From there, so we did this last time we were together. So I'm going to keep this angle of the mat. We're going to lie onto the back, okay? So I'm going to have, hopefully this will be visible. Yeah, that's good. So I'm lying on the back. I'm floating the shins parallel to the floor. The back of the body's on the floor. I'm going to then bring my palms one on into the inside of each knee. Okay, so the backs of the hands are pressing towards each other. The palms are facing towards the inner knee. So as we inhale, we float the knees wide. It's pretty straightforward. Then you exhale, you resist the movement of the exhale as you bring the knees back together. Inhale, opening, floating the knees wide. Exhale, pulling the legs back together. So it's like we're definitely resisting with the exhale, the adduction of drawing the knees back together again, or the inner thighs back together again. So just do that a few times. Back of the pelvis on the floor. My experience with this is it can create a sense of space around the pelvis and the back of the pelvis, the sacrum around the sacrum. So even though it's like an active movement, so I'm resisting as strongly as I can the movement of the legs back together, okay, with the exhale. Okay, and then release. When you've done enough of those, release for a moment. Into semi-supine. Take a pause there. And from there, take now the legs up to the vertical. Same idea, but now with the legs straight. So the hands go to the inner knees or the inner, just below the knees, the inner thigh. On the inhale, you float the legs wide. Exhale, resist. Inhale, take the legs wide. Exhale, resist. Inhale, wide. Exhale, resist. Inhale, this time go wide and stay there. Feel a little bit of weight with your arms on the inner legs. Allowing the legs to be as straight as possible. Back of the head on the floor. And then bring the palms together between the legs. So you're projecting through the arms. Between the legs. And then we can start to pull up, looking between the legs. Lifting the head off the floor. Looking towards the hands. Projecting through both legs. Breathing now. Again, that's quite intense on the inner groins. Breathing. And from there, we're going to release, bring the hands round the outer legs, interlace the fingers, rest into the legs in towards your chest, rest the head on the floor, breathe there. Hopefully this is making sense, right? So the back of the pelvis is on the floor. We'll just do that cycle one more time. So the legs go up towards the vertical. Still, if you can, back of the pelvis on the floor. Hands come to the inner legs. Okay. Inhale, we float the legs wide, straight as possible, the legs. Exhale, resist the movement back, resist the adduction. Inhale wide. You could try different hand positions, maybe onto the inner thighs, or the inner knees. With the exhale, drawing the legs back together. Next time we go wide with the legs, staying there on the inhale. Bring the palms together, the legs straightening as much as possible, picking the head up, looking between the legs. Lifting the thoracic spine off the floor. You're definitely feeling the sacrum, lower vertebrae on the floor. Strong on the inner thighs. Breathing there. When you're ready, coming down, folding the legs in towards your chest. Interlacing the fingers for a moment. Breathe there, pause. Letting the body be quiet, the whole of the back on the floor. Releasing the neck. From here, rolling to one side. Okay. And we're going to come face down onto the belly. So coming into prone position. And extend one leg back, the other leg back. Bring the feet together. Again, I think we did this last time. This is sort of preparation for what we're going to come to. So I want you to bring the hands down, close into your body. My hands are slightly forward of the elbows, but I'm definitely grounding the hands actively, the thumbs long, elbows tucking in towards me. This is sometimes called Vimasana. So we're again deliberately separating the legs actively. So on an inhale, I want you to lift the chest off the floor and separate the legs as wide as they'll go. Exhale, back, 2 feet together, head to the floor. That's the movement. Okay, so it's like a leg widening, chest lifting at the same time. Inhale, lengthening the front of the body. Exhale, back, down into the floor. Elbows staying tucked into the center line. We'll repeat this like 8 or 10 times. Inhaling. Coming up, exhaling, going down. Pubic bone rooted, lengthening from the pubic bone to the throat. Lengthening from the pubic bone towards the tops of the feet. On the inhale. This is working more actively, lower back, on the spinal column. Paravertebralis, as they're called. That whole chain of muscles that run up and down the spine. Again, helps to strengthen around the sacral area, supposedly. And releasing. Coming up now to all fours. Sitting back now onto the feet. Again, I think we did this last time we were together. So I want to take this into a slightly different direction. So we'll do this preparatory movement. So actually, this can be really intense on the ankles. So what you can do is tuck the toes under. So I'm sitting a bit higher. If it's really intense on your ankles, you can also do it with the tops of the feet on the floor. We bring the hands onto the hips. And the movement is you swing slightly forwards. As you inhale, you lift, not all the way up. And as you exhale, you lower yourself down, but the buttocks don't come all the way to the heels. Inhale, lift. So we're engaging the thighs, but not coming all the way up. So you're keeping, as it were, the front of the pelvis, the front of the hip area fairly closed, emphasizing more work in the thighs. So I'm doing that. This is like the easiest version. So I'm tucking the toes under. I'm lifting up on the inhale, exhale, lowering myself down, but not coming all the way down. Inhale up, keeping a sense of the body pivoting forwards. Okay, then rest down onto the tops of the feet if that's possible, or you could sit onto bricks or onto a bolster between the feet. That would also be possible. Again, feeling the work in the front of the ankle. So let's take that one more step. So this time the tops of the feet flat onto the floor. So working into that front ankle. Hands onto the hips, pivoting the pelvis a little bit forwards and the body slightly forwards. So it's almost like we're leaning forwards. As you inhale, you come up, pressing the shins towards the floor now. As you exhale, so we're keeping the front of the pelvis, as it were, closed, lowering yourself down. This is going to be more intense, but not coming all the way to the heels. Inhale back up. This is really like heat generating movement. Exhale to go down, not coming all the way down. Probably you're going to want to do this 4 or 5 times, maybe 3 is a lot. It's very intense on the thighs. So I'm keeping a sense of the front of the pelvis closed, the front of the hip closed. Exhale, releasing down. Take a rest, allowing yourself to come back into the vertical. Just really strong on your ankles. Release out the legs for a moment, one leg at a time. Okay. Once again, tucking the toes under. And you can have the knees slightly separated, hands onto the hips. So we're going to come all the way up this time. So it's almost like the last 2 poses were very contained. There's a sense of keeping the front of the pelvis closed, the front of the hip area closed. We're now going to allow that to open. So we need to, as it were, swing up and allow the pelvis to move forwards. Okay, so do you check what's happening in your knees? You might want to put some more padding under your knees because we're going to work a little bit from this position. I'm just folding the end of my mat in, and you can separate the knees so you feel there's a sense of stability. So we're going to move towards what's called Ustrasana. So the hands come onto, well, just to really illustrate this, you can bring your hands onto the front of the hip area, so that hip flexor area, allow that area to move forwards, and then reach up into your left hand and reach down into your right hand, reaching for the right ankle. This should be fairly accessible. So you can either look down towards your right foot or look up and allow the pelvis to come forwards. Lifting up. From there, exhale, back up to the vertical. Hands back onto the hips or onto the front of the pelvis. So you're aware of this front pelvic area opening, and we'll move to the other side. So left hand goes down, right hand goes up. It's coming into like a one-armed Ustrasana. So one issue with this is it can take more work into one side of the spine, which you may notice. Okay, from there, inhale, coming up. Exhale, rest back onto the heels for a moment. Again, depending how your knees and your ankles are, you may want to extend out the backs of the legs, okay? for a moment from all fours, or even take dog pose to open the backs of the legs. So I'd like us to visit this again, Ustrasana. So make sure you've got some padding under your knees. But this time, tops of the feet on the floor, if you can, opening the ankles towards the floor. Hands come onto the hips. We swing up, this time coming all the way up. So the idea is to bring the hips over the knees. You can separate your knees. So you feel comfortable in the pelvis, stable. Now from here, we're going to try as best we can to take both hands back. So there's different ways of doing this. So one way is to, perhaps the easiest way is to allow yourself to drop back a bit. So you allow the pelvis to drop back towards the feet. Look for the heels. And then you move the pelvis forwards again. Keep the head lifted and looking forwards. Chest lifting, which is very intense if you take the head back. So I suggest you keep the head lifted, looking forwards, but emphasizing lifting the chest and moving the pelvis forwards. Ustrasana. So obviously the full expression of the pose, you take the head back, but if you're going to do that, doing that very, very gently, and if you've got any neck issues, then keep looking forwards, okay? From there on an inhale, we swing up and then allow ourselves to drop down to sitting on the feet. Hopefully that's feeling okay. Just checking to see what's going on there. Does that feel okay? Everybody, yeah, okay. So let's just explore another way in, okay? But we're going to keep the gaze forwards, okay? It does feel maybe you're not doing the full pose or somehow, yeah, because effectively we're keeping the neck in flexion, but the rest of the spine is in extension. But just to keep it safer for the neck. So what we're going to do is bring the palms together into Namaste. Come swing back up. If you can, tops of feet on the floor, separating the knees as is appropriate. So this is going to emphasize moving the pelvis forwards, opening the chest, and then allowing the hands to drop back, but keep looking. So it's almost like we're dropping back into it rather than lifting up into Ustrasana. So keeping the pelvis forwards, opening the chest, looking forwards. When you feel like you're getting into a reasonable extension of the spine, then reach back with both hands, looking for the heels, breathing now. Again, lifting the chest, lifting the pelvis forwards, keeping the gaze forwards. So if it's possible to come back up, bringing the hands back up into Namaste and swing back up. And then dropping down to the floor. Very slowly, take a pause there. So you might notice the difference is when you drop back into the pose, it's a sense of the spine opening, like the front of the spine opening into the pose. Whereas if we push up from the floor, it feels different. Okay, so maybe let's just go back to the first version so you can compare. Okay, so coming up, hands on the hips, coming up. So we'll allow the pelvis to drop down and then look for the heels. Okay, then from there, pushing the pelvis back up and lifting the chest. Gaze forwards. This is the first way in. Breathing now. Lifting the chest. From there, dropping the pelvis down, swinging up, and then allowing yourself to rest down. I would say that's easier to get into. And I come back to the second version. Hands into Namaste, swinging up. This time the pelvis moves forwards before we come into the pose, before we reach back, lifting the chest, opening the front of the pelvis. When you feel it's the time, without dropping the pelvis towards the floor, reach back, keeping the gaze forwards. taking hold of the heels. Keep the head lifted, right? Just to be careful with the neck. We'll come back to this pose at another time and look at the neck, taking the head back. Shins grounded. Pelvis moving forwards. To come out, let's see if we can come out the way we went in. So hands into Namaste, lifting the chest up, more demanding, and resting down. Onto the feet, Ustrasana. From here, coming into all fours, opening out the backs of the legs. Just going to check the time because I know that it is flying. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, from there, I'd like you to sit down and take the legs into wide. So we're going to come back into a more yin style practice to finish this sequence. So Ustrasana, yeah, it's not yin at all. It's very much toning, strengthening, it's demanding for the spine. So I'm going to bring some support in front of me, knowing that coming forwards in this is not that easy for me. So taking the legs more or less equally wide, so separating the femurs more or less equally. And then very simple, reaching up, allowing yourself to release forwards, coming into a forward flexion without forcing the body at all. So very gentle, we're doing the opposite that we've just been doing. So we're now, which was an extension, we're now coming into, make it as gentle as possible. Gentle flexion. So it's for me, I'm noticing this more in the backs of the legs than anywhere else. But it's going to depend on each person. If you're coming forwards, not quite reaching the floor, bring the floor up, support the forearms. My legs are fairly passive, but as I've said this before, I do like to keep my feet in the vertical. So I'm keeping a little bit of action in the feet in that pose. Again, releasing, softening, working with gravity, allow your body to relax and release into this pose. No efforting. Checking that you're relaxing around the shoulders, the neck. Okay, from there, coming up on an inhale, turning towards your left leg. You can bring your support to the right. We're then going to swing back out, but towards the right leg. So it's a slight lateralization in the pose. If you want to take your left arm up and over, you can also do that, more intense. But similarly, as we did in the shoelace, if you want to work more gently, bring your left hand to the left hip. So emphasizes a little bit less loading on the spine, on the structures of the spine and the upper back and shoulders. If you want to increase the load, where you take your arm up, so the arm's got a weight, several kilos, just acting like when a weight leverage. as you take the arm out also to the right, left arm to the right. Breathing now, but listening to the body and doing what it wants and needs. It's always quite a challenging question. Obviously, there can be like a clash between need and want, so it may actually be useful to challenge the body in ways that it doesn't want sometimes. From here, on an inhale, coming back up to center. And if you're using support, take it to the other side, left side. We're going to turn towards the right leg. I'm turning towards the right, left arm goes up. And then I gently lower myself to the left side. Okay, using, Marcus, I'm using the support here to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to keep my right arm down. But you could intensify the work here by taking the right arm also to the left. The gaze can be down, can be forward, can be up. Find a position for your gaze. Stay there. Breathing. I'm still keeping the feet slightly active. So I'm keeping the feet towards the vertical, which does engage a little bit the legs. Breathing now. Okay. Feeling the stretch in the right side of the body. As we then, with an inhale, carefully swing up to center. We're going to go straight into a meditation pose. So I'd like us to do whatever's necessary to be comfortable in a meditation pose. You can go into Shavasana after we've meditated, but make sure you're going to be basically comfortable, stable. You make it as easy or as hard as you like. So I'm going to go for a little bit of support for the knees and everything, okay? So really easy cross-legged position. But if you prefer meditating kneeling, then go for that. Do set that up. So we're going to close the eyes and do a session of about 15-20 minutes of Metta Bhavava practice, okay? So you've probably noticed from your own experience the benefit of meditating after doing yoga. So the body, you feel more connected with the body, sense of more spaciousness and more energy in the body. So I'd like us to spend a few moments tuning in with the body experience. Being aware of that sequence, which was a bit of a mixture of hip openers and then a little flurry of extensions, spinal extension with Ustrasana. Which is more stimulating, more tonifying, toning. And emphasizing here awareness of your connection with the ground. Sense of your weight through the sitting bones, through the points of contact with the cushion, the blocks, or the floor. And allowing the spine to find the vertical axis very gently. So you may find, this does, at least has happened in my own experience and talking to other people, is that the spine comes into, it's almost like it's self-aligns through our meditation practice. We allow it to, gentle pops and creaks as it comes into alignment. Or noticing any imbalances in the spinal column. Maybe you're leaning to one side or feeling pulled to one side or another. Allowing awareness of that to be there. Those sensations in the spine, feeling the connection with the ground. And seeing if we can soften and release around the shoulders, arms, around the legs and the pelvis, around the torso, chest, spine itself, the head, the face, sense of softening. And we're going to move into a 3-stage Metta Bhavava. So in the first stage, we're going to develop loving kindness or connect with loving kindness, appreciation for ourselves. Second phase will be those of us here right now. And then the third phase will be the whole world. Those of us that are surround us, in the immediate vicinity, expanding into the whole world. So starting off with ourselves. So like to tune in with your body. From that body awareness, bringing in a sense of gentleness, kindness, warmth. Bringing that towards your experience, whatever's happening, whether it's uncomfortable, pleasant, unpleasant, difficult, unpleasant, or even painful. And see if you can embrace this immediate, as it were, tangible body experience with kindness. This will be the first stage. I'm going to dedicate some 5 minutes or so to each stage now. Allowing the spine to grow towards the vertical, releasing wherever it's possible, and soaking the whole body, physical experience in kindness, gentleness, warmth, accepting. In the practice of Metta Bhavana, there's a willingness to turn towards our experience. That can be challenging. That does require courage, requires us to, as it were, take the initiative, turning towards our experience, just as it is, with quality of gentleness, kindness. Moving on to the second stage, being aware of those of us that are in the group now, or that tend to come to the group. So just imagining one by one, maybe calling their name in your imagination. It's like saying hi to each one, saying hello, greeting, with a sense of kindness, warmth. Friendliness. To each and every one of us in the group right now, or that come to mind. Checking that we're softening through the body, releasing the spine, moving towards the vertical axis, that we're floating up to the crown, being aware of any tension in the body with gentleness, with kindness. I'm wishing that all of us here, may that we be well, at ease. May we be able to grow and evolve, overcome our difficulties, find satisfaction. With the practice of Metta Bhavava, is a willingness to embrace imperfection. Recognizing that ourselves and others are not perfect. Bringing to mind those of us in the group. And then from here, we're going to allow our awareness, our imagination to expand outwards. No limit, no limits. Can go to the edge of the universe and beyond. Like a sun radiating light and warmth. in all directions. So I'd like us to bring to mind those of us that are in our immediate vicinity, physical vicinity, maybe in the same building, same area, same street or neighborhood. May they, each and every one of them, be happy, able to grow, to evolve. Forgiving those around us for their imperfections, just as we are able to forgive ourselves. And then from there, from the, as it were, the immediate vicinity, in your own way, through your own imagination, allow your attention, your awareness, kindness to expand forever outwards, in all directions, above, below, to the right, to the left, in front, behind, extending outwards to all life, all sentient life, all life, all living beings. You could even extend a sense of love towards the entire universe, if that's meaningful, sense of appreciation. And checking in your body. You can release, soften, allow the spine to grow into the vertical. Releasing the shoulders, the neck, allowing your awareness to expand outwards to include all beings, beyond self, towards other. And just for a moment, we're going to anchor our attention into our own, as it were, heart center. Maybe it's even helpful to bring the hands into Namaste, rest the hands back to the heart center. A sense of anchoring into your own body, heart, mind, citta. Sense of appreciation for our own efforts of others, sense of appreciation of the practice and the lineage of practice. And when we're ready, so I'm going to say goodbye now. When you're ready, I do suggest you come down into Shavasana just for a few minutes, just to absorb what we've done in this session. If you've got the time, don't have to do any more today. Probably already done a lot of stuff. So if it's possible, just resting back into Shavasana. Thank you very much.